Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me today is Jaime. Jaime, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great here in lunch. Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's do it. Today we're talking about Bryan Kohberger, and we're asking the question: when did police zero in on him? Not so much when did they find out about him, but when did they start to zero in on him? Because I think those are two different times, right? The first thing that we can look at is right here in the affidavit. It says, after reviewing the numerous observations of suspect vehicle 1, which is the vehicle that they had observed around the 1122 King Road residence, right?
Yeah.
The forensic examiner initially believes that the suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 13 Hyundai Elantra. Upon further review, they indicated it also could be an 11 to 16 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, investigators have been reviewing information on persons in possession of a vehicle that is 2011 to 16 white Elantra. I mean, when do you think that they figured that out? Do you think that was something they figured out pretty quickly?
Because of the doorbell, was it Ring camera? Picked them up.
Yeah.
It was hard to tell what year it was, and I don't know what happened, but they made a change from 2013 all the way to 2016. I don't know why they widened that search. What made them widen that search?
Right. Yeah. Now we know that on November 25th that Moscow Police Department sent out information to Washington, right? So that they can have local area law enforcement try to locate a possible vehicle matching the description. We know the 29th they found Kohberger's vehicle and that they sent over the information of Kohberger to Officer Payne, who saw the bushy eyebrows, and that's kind of what got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
My question is, why did it take so long from that point to get the cell phone records, right? The cell phone records weren't until December 23rd. And when did they change their mind from a 2011 to 13 to include all the way up to a 2016? So this is the first time, this is a press release that we see anything about the white Elantra. It says below are stock images of 2011 to 13 Hyundai Elantra. They are not the actual vehicle. Now, one question that everybody was, bringing up is if they were already on to Bryan Kohberger at this moment, why would they still be looking for a vehicle and not include the one of his, year model? That would bring in a lot of tips, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know, because that press was released. When was it released? December, right? December 7th?
December 7th. Mm-hmm.
And they already had eyes on Kohberger since the end of November, right? Or at least to his vehicle, right?
To November 29th, correct.
I think maybe they had another suspect, because also, I don't know if this is a common practice what they do when they say that it's a vehicle suspect 1. Does that necessarily say that it's just there's more suspects, or does that necessarily just say that it's just one? That's how they describe the suspect's vehicle.
They just described it as just one, but it could be typically when you write reports, or when you become a police officer, the first thing you learn is writing reports. One of the first reports that you learn is an accident report. And even if there's one vehicle involved in an accident, you are trained to write, vehicle 1, vehicle 1. So it's possible that all of that was just police jargon in writing.
Okay, because from what I understand, it kind of makes it feel like there might have been more of a more cars or that fit the description of Kohberger's, and maybe that's why it took him so long to key in on his.
That's true. That's very possible. That is highly possible.
Especially because those Elantras are they're pretty cheap to afford. You know what I mean? Payments are real small payments, and college town's gonna have those. Trying to save every penny, right?
Definitely, 100%. And so I'm going through here looking at this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And December 7th is when they ask for help. The next update that they have isn't until December 20th. So they don't update anybody, right? Yeah. Now we know that they get the cell phone data on December 23rd, and that is based on information provided by WSU website. Kohberger is currently a PhD student in criminology at Washington State. Pursuant to records provided by a member of the interview panel for the Pullman Police Department, we learned that Kohberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. These records show that Kohberger wrote an essay when he applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department in fall 2022. Kohberger wrote an essay. They had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Kohberger also posted a Reddit survey that can be found in an open source internet search. The survey asked for participants to provide information to understand emotions and psychological traits to influence decision-making when committing a crime. As part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine the cellular devices that utilize the cell towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022, between 3 and 5 a.m. All right. So all that is to say that they did an investigation, and based on that investigation, they were able to pull up or get enough information to get a warrant. Now, we know that the warrant was December 23rd. Do you think that it took that 23, 24 days for them to pull up this information and then go after that? Now, remember, they weren't looking for an 13 at this point. Yeah. And I forgot to mention this, but from the 7th to the 20th, they don't have any updates.
Yeah, they don't.
Now, on the 20th, something interesting happens. It says Idaho cops may finally have a lead in student murders as they probe abandoned white Hyundai Elantra. So in Idaho, police are investigating a white Elantra found abandoned in Oregon for a possible link. This is the one in Eugene, Oregon that we all, everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
That was on December 20th. If we look at an airmail article from Howard Bloom, this says here, Chief Fry for Once Upbeat met in late morning of December 20th with Rand Walker, the department psychologist, and Rand Opes, one of the police chaplains in the courthouse law library. It was one of the few places they could huddle where the chief felt no one could be listening. I'm going to need you guys to get ready with deliberate coyness. I'm going to need you before long. The two men eagerly asked that there had been a break in the case. Fry did his best to rein in a pregnant smile. All I'm saying here it is, I need you both to be in standby. I might be calling you very soon. But at 4:30 that afternoon, the Moscow Police Communications Team issued a flash update. Investigators were aware of the Hyundai Elantra located in Eugene, Oregon, and have spoken to the owner. The vehicle is not believed to have any relation to any property in Moscow, Idaho, or the ongoing murder investigation. And just like that, psychologist and chaplain knew the chief, despite hopeful conversation earlier the day, would not be calling them soon. And so if we go back to this is December 21st, white Hyundai Elantra spotted in Oregon, not connected to the Idaho murders, December 21st, right?
Yeah.
This clearly isn't Bryan Kohberger's car. This is before the warrants on December 23rd. Do you think that they were looking at somebody different up until this point?
It could have been that a vehicle they were keeping an eye on, and then once they had it, they figured out that it wasn't part of the murders, part of the crime, and that's what led them to believe to set their sights on Kohberger.
Right. No, I agree. And one thing everybody asks is why didn't they ever change, the year?
Yeah.
The reason being, and if we look at this, there is, some stuff for the 24th, the 30th, the 27th, 24th. These are all days after they have found out that the vehicle in Eugene is not the vehicle. These are days after they've been already searching for Bryan Kohberger as well. I think they had multiple teams on multiple people. We're all aware of that. JLR, Jonathan Lee Riches Investigates. He was out there in Pullman and in Moscow, and he saw that police were outside of the Sigma Chi fraternity house, not too far away, keeping a close eye on that on different occasions.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I think we can agree or assume that they probably had their eye on a few people, including Kohberger.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we find out that there's a possibility that they lost Kohberger on a cross-country trip, do you think that's because Kohberger outsmarted them, or maybe because at that point, December, was it 16th?
Yeah.
13th, somewhere around there, they weren't completely sold on the fact that Kohberger was the person?
Yeah, I think it could have been a couple of different situations, but I think at that point that the sights weren't on him yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think I'm guessing when they see a suspect, then they can consider him a flight risk, and they can do something before he takes off. But at this point, when he left and he got stopped, I think on 2 different occasions, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he was the main suspect. I think it was just they were just looking at certain vehicles and keeping an eye on.
That's quite possible. And I think that's the route that I think that's very possible and very likely. In fact, I don't think Kohberger was their initial suspect. I think they had multiple initial suspects. And when this vehicle showed up that it wasn't involved, then they had to, continue the search. And I think somebody else had an eye on Kohberger at that time. I think that they didn't have all eyes on him, because if they did, they wouldn't have lost him. Not to mention, why didn't they pick up any of the possible trash or whatever that he may have left at any other marker spot throughout this entire time that they were watching him? I think there's a few things that went into play. They started to watch him just because of the fact that his height and weight matched, and so did the possible vehicle. And they started to see some things. They started to see him walking around with gloves on his hands. They started to see him disperse trash in different areas in different separate baggies that were relatively suspicious. And so as they were watching him, they started to do an investigation on his background. Like we mentioned before, they find something that either he told someone something or he wrote down something, some sort of detail that ties back to this crime scene. Whether it was, if I were to commit a crime, I would do this. And then whatever it was that he said was done. Right.
Yeah.
Because from December 21st, from the time, or December 20th, to the when they found the Eugene vehicle and confirmed that it wasn't involved, 3 days later they have cell phone warrant for Kohberger. 3 days after that, they have they pick up his trash.
Yeah.
So something happened right there, and I think it started with the vehicle in Eugene not being tied. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. I see. I said the same thing. Once that vehicle was out of the suspect list, I think all force went towards him, towards Bryan Kohberger as suspect number one.
Well, we're going to talk about this and a whole lot more tomorrow night on our live. Please hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell. That way, if you're not already, getting notified of all our content, you will be. Peace out, y'all.
Yeah.